So a quick note on what exactly is digital transformation. Well, it's the transformation that we call from an access to an experience. So you have an access, you go into a bank branch, that used to be an access. Thereafter, you started using a mobile app, but you still have to probably download a form, fill it up, and then take it to the bank branch. We think it is digitization, but it is not. Actually, it is just digitization and ensuring that you're just making your services more accessible. But that's not an experience. The experience would be walking into, probably when you're checking out new houses, walking into or checking out new houses on a real estate agent's app, and automatically getting prompts for the fact that you are eligible for a certain amount of loans, what's the amount, what's the tenure, things like that. That's an experience, and that's a journey. Okay, so you can't achieve it. Ashok was talking about it, and a lot of people earlier also said that transformation is a journey. A few people might take a couple of years. A few people might take longer to do that, but that's essentially a journey. So what do we call as continuous delivery? It's the capability to deliver software into production on demand and safely, right? A lot of people think, oh, as fast as I can deliver on production, that's good enough, but no, you have to deliver it safely as well. That's key. Decrease risk, that is most important. So that's, having said that, what the definitions are, let's go ahead and see why we really need to talk about continuous delivery and digital transformation. We see that there's a multi-front digital war, right? Platforms are changing. A lot of the customer experience is now being held by, let's say, fintechs, if we talk about the banking industry, and so on in a whole lot of other industries as well, which means you need to start re-architecting your platforms, and that's what Abhijit was talking about. How do you re-architect a monolithic model, make it more API-centric, and finally, you still have legacy architecture, which is there at the back end. So how do you transform? That is why we call it as a multi-front digital war. And why is that so? Because you don't really know who your next competitor is. And especially banks, if you see the next slide, Amazon, that could be your next competitor. That's what's happening in the US. You're seeing they're disintermediating parts of the customer experience and pushing it out onto their customers. And you'd come to think of it, is Amazon really servicing only, it's a retail chain, or is it also providing me financial services? And as you can see, these are all live examples of services. That is what is happening, right? They are disintermediating a whole lot of services that you have. So that could be your next competitor. Okay, so how do you ensure that you're ready for ensuring that you're relevant in the next, while you are embarking on this journey of digital transformation? That becomes really key. So how do you build better experiences and faster? That's when you automate your development, testing, and releases. So Ashok did go through this slide, and I'll skip through this, but why? Because this is important, and he did cover parts of it. So I'll take I'll take some more time and spend some time on this, on how we are helping our customers with our solution. So one of the things is, whenever you have to start by something like planning, right? You have to plan out your user stories, plan out your requirements that you have, and where do you typically store your requirements? It's probably in something like Agile Central, or maybe Jira, as a lot of y'all are using. But that's really where all your business requirements start. Your user stories start from there. The next thing is getting that requirement and translating it into test cases, because you have to test it out. And that's where a solution like Agile Requirements Designer comes into the picture, which helps you auto-generate your test cases from these requirements that you might have. Now, the requirements can be of any form. They could be Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, user stories. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what's the outcome. The outcome is better test cases and more optimized. We did this for a financial services provider. It's actually a card processor. So they had approximately 34,000 test cases, which they used to run per regression. These were regression test cases which they had to run per release, which costed them approximately 4 hours of downtime, because they had to really run through all these test cases. Using something like Agile Requirements Designer, they've been able to reduce that time by 50%. So means they realized that 17,000 of their test cases were actually irrelevant. They were not really relevant to what was the actual requirement, what was the actual business functionality, which meant 2 hours shaved off from that downtime, which it used to cost them, which means that network is more up, and their cards will not be declined at their merchants. So that's how ARD is ensuring that there's a whole lot of outcome when we talk about using these technologies. The next thing is you start testing, you start hitting, you need to integrate with multiple payment gateways, you need to integrate with OSS, BSS systems if you are a telco, and so many other systems that you have in the enterprise. And that's where service virtualization is really useful, because it helps you emulate and simulate the backend behavior of these services. So irrespective of whether it's a payment gateway, it could be a mainframe, it could be MQs, it could be message buses, anything. We're able to simulate these and ensure that they are deployable on an enterprise-wide level. The next thing that you start doing is you start looking around for test data. I need to start doing my testing. Let's get some test data. Where do I get the test data from? I think we have a production database. Let's just pull out a quick copy of it, run some masking run some masking rules, and I think it should do it. Well, guess what? Firstly, it's not compliance. Audit does not allow you. If you are in the European Union, due to the GDPR regulations, you are explicitly forbidden from doing that. So you really cannot do that. So a lot of people do it. Well, we support masking and then creating a subset out of that production data. But what we also do is help you understand what are those test scenarios to which you might not have data even in the production database. Because you'll never have edge conditions, you'll never have negative scenario in a production database, right? So we help you generate those we help you generate those scenarios and hence that test data, so that you get a more complete coverage when you're doing your testing. Okay, so we also synthetically generate test data. Now, in the Indian scenario, we're working with a couple of banks. So they are talking about they don't want to use Aadhaar data, they do not want to use PAN card numbers which are live from their databases. So we are helping them. It's a quick rule that you at the end of the day have to write, and you are able to generate maybe hundreds, thousands of these numbers, as well as things like date of birth, first name, last name, address fields. That's what we are able to do with Test Data Manager. The next thing that you hit is, well, you need an execution engine to run these test cases, and that's where application test comes into the picture. That's an application test automation framework which allows you to run these test cases and hence test scripts. What's important is you typically need to do this before your GUI has been built, because you end up waiting a lot of time. A lot of time you end up waiting for the GUI to be built so that you can then go ahead and test it. But what's happening is you need to have the ability to test out your business logic much earlier in the life cycle, and that's what application test helps you do that. Finally, your code is ready, you're ready to roll, but you still have to scale. And that's where BlazeMeter comes into the picture, where it helps you generate the load that is relevant to hit your servers, your web-facing internet sites, your apps, whatever the case may be. Do performance testing at scale. So I was doing this for a partner event, and there I was talking to a lot of our partners, and what came out was one of our partners, along with our team, is actually using BlazeMeter to generate a concurrency of 10 million virtual users. That's the concurrency that they are using for a client in the UK. That's the kind of scale that we can give you. So it's not scale within the enterprise, it now becomes cloud scale. And that's what BlazeMeter allows you to do it. And the best part, it's SaaS, you can spin up instances at the fly, you can do it in the next 2-3 minutes, okay? It's that easy. So now that you've done your performance testing, you know that your application can scale, you still need to deploy it on different environments. And that's where release automation comes into the picture, which helps you really deploy, track, and fully automate the releases that you would have. So that's release automation, which helps you deploy irrespective of whatever landscape that you would have in the in your environments. But you still have something that is missing. You lack this end-to-end flow. You lack that one pane of glass, as a lot of people call it, one dashboard which can help you track everything. Where are my user stories? Which test cases have passed? Which have failed? Which environment is my code in? When is it going to be promoted? What's that ticket number that is tied to the promotion into production? And that is what Continuous Delivery Director helps you do that. Gives you full visibility, which allows you to orchestrate this entire cycle that I've been talking about, right from plan to release, orchestrate, gain visibility into it, and also gain analytics from it. Okay. the net result is you now are ready for release, and well, you're good to go. So that's what our solutions are, but how are they being used by our customers? I think that's very, very important, and that's what we're going to see in the next section. So we'll talk about use cases, how people are adopting our technology and how they're using. I've kept a lot of metrics in the next few slides, metrics for how the customer is gaining. And the reason why, and a lot of those metrics you'll see are around productivity. Why? Because as we know, productivity ends up paying for itself. It gets this compounding effect, right? Every 1% gain that you're doing today, you know that it's going to pay out on the next time when you gain another 1%. So that's what is important with productivity. Something like compounding, right? If you sow, you reap it, and if you do not sow, you pay it, right? So that's how productivity is. So a lot of our metrics are around productivity, around costing, and how much of dollar value we've helped save our customers. So the first use case that I have is the State Bank of India, and it's a sandbox use case. Very interesting. State Bank of India wanted to do this hackathon, and they wanted to expose out a certain set of APIs, and they thought of exposing their UAT infrastructure. Sometime before the start of the hackathon, their internal security group refused permission. They said, no way we are going to allow external participants to hit our UAT infrastructure. And this was 4 days before the start, and that's when they came to us and they said, can we do anything? And we said, yeah, we have a technology which is known as service virtualization, which allows you to do this. Set up sandboxes, whether in the cloud, in your data center, people can hit it as much as they want. Nothing's going to break. There's no test database which will get burned because someone tried to be smart and put in some kind of value in the data fields, because it's all a virtual service at the end of the day. And within 4 to 5 days, we were ready, and we virtualized core banking APIs. We virtualized even the NPCI APIs that you have, the UPI payment interface. We virtualized all of that. So the net result was they had 3,000 hackathon registrations, a whole lot of innovative ideas that got submitted, and finally, they were able to save a lot of time and risk, I would say. Sometimes we just tend to discount risk, but it was very important that they were able to reduce the risk. And this is the kind of feedback that we ended up getting. So this is a public case study. You can check it on the CA site, or you can ask us. We'd be more than glad to help you with it. That's what came out from the hackathon. So that's one example of one of our customers using it. The next one is, again, these are multiple private banks actually, where they are looking at virtualizing core banking, payment gateways, UPI interfaces, wallets, MQs, anything. And we started with this private bank by just virtualizing 4 or 5 virtual services. Today they are sitting at, I think, 300 virtual services. They virtualized things like ISO 8583. They virtualized MQ interfaces, REST gateways, payment gateways, whatever the case may be. And yeah, things, even external gateways, so a lot of times when you're integrating with Aadhaar-enabled payment services, it's a pain to do it because that setup is never stable. It's never there when you want it. So we virtualize these kind of interfaces as well. And that's the kind of value that we got. We were able to decrease their testing times by 50% and save a lot of time that they were able to respond. They were able to reduce the time to market. And that's a bit of how this works when they were trying to create a mobile app, how it integrates, and it's actually never hitting live services. It's actually hitting, all of these are virtual services. Okay, so a lot of risk and a lot of risk that was mitigated, as well as a lot of time that was saved by shipping code faster. So does that mean only banks use it? No, even airlines use this. The next use case is from an airline. It's in Far East. It's actually in Japan. So 2020 is going to be Tokyo Olympics. So ANA, which is their airline, they decided they needed a modern airline ticketing system, or a modern interface on their web and mobile apps. So that's when they, and yet their reservation system is still running on the mainframes. It takes them 6 months probably to do performance testing. So with service virtualization, they were able to reduce that time to 0. Actually, they used to take 6 months. They used to take approximately a year, which we've cut down by 6 months in performance testing. 50% of the testing workloads we've been able to reduce, and obviously a whole lot of faster development. So they are able to meet their deadline. That's more critical, right? Versus rest of the metrics, I would say. Now, we are all familiar with this bank, and this is more around the automation story that we have. Why did they want to talk about, why did they want to really start on the journey around workload automation? So some of the challenges that they had is optimizing the start and end of day business processes that you might have. Now, a lot of times people love scripts, love their scripts, and are very protective about their scripts. But guess what? The bank does not like it because they don't scale. And more importantly, when people leave, you have to somehow ensure that there's proper documentation, there's a proper KT that happens for the other person to run. And that's where enterprise solutions like workload automation help you leverage these, help you eliminate these challenges. So one of the things was they wanted to optimize their start and end of day business processes, reduce the mean time to recovery. They went live almost 12 years back now, and these were the few applications that they've standardized. 2,000 jobs is when they started. Remember, it's a journey, and you'd be surprised to see the stats on the next slide as this play out. So they reduced their EOD window by 30%. They are compliant to all their audits and security compliances that they have. And now they've scaled up to 55,000 jobs, which are across 200 business applications and on more than 400 plus application servers. That's the kind of scalability that we can give with our automation solutions. And this is again, ICICI Lombard, a year and a half back, they decided to start using release automation because they felt they need to really move faster to the market. And again, metrics from that, they had a turnaround time which was 96%, which now they've increased to 99.5%. Every month they are saving 13 man days of effort. That's a huge amount, which is being redeployed to more strategic initiatives. And they've onboarded, I think it's approximately 100 applications that they've managed to onboard on this release and deployment automation platform. So that's the kind of scale that we are talking about. And when we talk about scale, there's another bank which is very famous, ING. The real reason for them investing into our solutions, especially around the automation space, was they had a very badly rated app on the App Store. So they had a badly rated app on the App Store, which they decided they need to do something. And that's when they embarked on this journey of continuous delivery, which is approximately 4-5 years back. And they decided they needed to do something. And I think approximately 6-8 months into the journey, they ensured that they were able to start these practices, ensure that they had the right skill sets, the right technologies, and the processes in place, which meant that their app now is actually, it's always consistently 4.5 stars on the App Store. Okay? So that's the journey which they embarked on. And in terms of scale, they had a time to market which was 30 days, which now they talk about doing it 4 days. So if you have an idea, it gets released into production within the next 4 days. Okay? And this is after going through a rigorous testing quality process. Any errors which were there, outages that were due to releases, they used to have approximately 30 plus in 2013, which now they've brought down to 0. And obviously they've increased their release cadence. Remember, this increase in release cadence also means that there is a certain amount of re-architecting that's happening at the back end, right? You can't expect the old core banking to start having more releases. No, that's not how it goes. Elements of it start getting re-architected, modernized, and that's when you can have more release velocity. Okay, so that's what it is. This is more from Test Data Manager, and this is Mannheim on how they're using Test Data Manager. Again, even in the US, they are very strict about not using production data for your testing purposes, and that's where Mannheim leverages Test Data Manager to generate synthetic test data, and where they can, they try to mask production data and do this at scale. And that's where we are helping them with CA Test Data Manager. And finally, this is more around performance testing now for IPL, for FIFA World Cup. How do you consume all these, I would say, media properties to a large extent? Most of us, instead of the TV, now consume it on our, why? Because we are traveling, we are in our workplaces. We end up consuming them on our tablets, on our smartphones, right? So the mode of consumption has changed, which means now when you want to scale, when you're streaming all these services or when you're streaming all this content, you have to have the right systems and you have to have it tested at the right moment to ensure that you're able to scale at the right, with the right amount. And that's what we did with this company. It's a very big media company in Mumbai, which ensured that whatever they were streaming for the IPL went off without a glitch. And we helped them test approximately 200K, which is 2 lakh virtual users that they wanted to test. And this was very quickly. They just used to give us a call 10, 15 days early before they wanted to do the testing. We used to quickly roll out a SaaS platform, provision whatever they had to do it. And all of this happened within 15 minutes, half an hour at the max. And that's the kind of scale that we give. So this is the BlazeMeter platform, which I said can scale. Now we've realized we can scale it to 10 million virtual users. Okay, so they used 2 lakh. You can leverage any cloud that is there. You can leverage AWS, Azure, Google, or you can, if there is some sensitive data, you can also do it from in-house. So you can do an on-prem version of it and drive, and have your load generators inside the data center as well. And the most important thing, you don't need to re-architect, reskill your workforce. Why? Because if they're using JMeter, it's the same scripts that are used for doing performance testing using the BlazeMeter cloud. You just upload these JMeter scripts and you're able to start scaling them the way that you want to. Thank you.